Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is January 26th, and right now we are looking at the mid-level water vapor loop. Ridge of high pressure continues to dominate Western Canada and much of the Pacific Northwest. Closed low over California, bringing much needed rainfall for Southern California. This is what's known as a Rex block, high pressure above the low pressure to the south. But of course, what everybody wants to know about here is the Arctic air. It's showing up in some of the smartphone apps here. I'm getting a lot of questions on is it going to snow or not. We're going to dive into the latest on that as we go through the video this morning. And there is that Rex block. It kind of looks exactly like what's going on right now, right? And then you can see what a mega block is versus a blocking high, which occurs during the summertime here. But good stuff here from the National Weather Service on basic wave patterns if you want to look that up. Now, taking a look here, check out this eddy feature off Vancouver Island. Some strong north winds out there interacting with the stratus marine layer out there. This is nothing sinister, but it does look like it has kind of an eye out there, so it might catch some people by surprise if you're looking at the visible satellite this morning. Lenticular cloud activity down across some of the Oregon Cascades. Look at Crater Lake right there. Hopefully somebody is catching some of this action on time lapse out there. Take a look at the Tempest weather stations. If you want one of these, click on that link down below for 10% off. It's a great weather station. I highly recommend it. I was testing mine yesterday at 20 miles per hour. The Davis hit 18 and the Davis Ultrasonic hit 19. So fun to watch that. So quiet weekend weather ahead. Of course, we only got today to go, but this is going to continue on in through portions of the upcoming week as well. Some air stagnation issues will be present, especially east of the Cascades, places like Idaho, Treasure Valley as well. Potentially all the way through the end of the upcoming week. And also the cold weather advisory. I think that Western Washington could get in on this as well. I've had some pretty hard freezes and frosty mornings and slick areas out there as well. It was 28 again this morning at my house when I woke up. Might have been a little bit chillier here in the overnight hours. But taking a look across the region, again, the air stagnation issues. And now one more thing before we get into the fun stuff here. Visibility. It looks like the fog may be returning as we go through tomorrow morning for a lot of the Puget Sound, some of the Sailor Sea up and down the Washington coastline, and maybe trying to creep into portions of central and southeastern Idaho there as well, and all the way on through Tuesday. So hopefully the fog isn't too bad out there. But we will have a pattern change eventually coming. Strong confidence in that. And that's what we're going to start to look at right now, the fun stuff. European on the left, 12Z, GFS 12Z on the right. So this is some of the issues we've been dealing with here. There's the ridge of high pressure, but then we get the polar lobe on the move. So right now we have pretty high confidence in Arctic air on the move, dropping down across British Columbia. But look at the difference in the track on the 12Z European versus the 12Z GFS. The 12Z European is no good for lower elevation snowfall down west of the mountains. It still could conceivably happen under this, but the GFS, much better track there. And before anybody starts to get a little bit depressed about what you're seeing with the 12Z European model, it's been flipping and flopping like a fish out of water back and forth as we go from model run to model run. So one model that it has not been inconsistent has been the European Artificial Intelligence. It has been very consistently showing the slope coming down, and actually a pretty good placement for the potential for some disruptive snowfall to get into the lower terrain west of the main mountain ranges. So this is the problem we're dealing with here over the next few days. You have to kind of prepare for this, and you got to prepare for the worst because you don't want people to get sprung up on with this last second snowfall or something like that coming. But right now there's still a lot of uncertainty on how this is going to unfold as Arctic air does move down across British Columbia. How will it get out into the lower elevation? Still a huge open question. Now looking at the European ensemble mean though, as of this morning, this paints a little bit of a different picture, and this is yesterday afternoon's. The anomaly is actually stronger here. This is more cold air on this morning's 12Z versus the 0Z, but the deterministic runs were kind of flipped and flopped. So you got to stay with the ensembles right now, and you got to do your due diligence and make sure you're checking everything here, because if you're just going by deterministic model runs here, you're going to be going on a roller coaster ride. And so if we take a look, very similar there. Very good model agreement, very good ensemble agreement. This is a Canadian, in fact, as well. And you can see the Arctic air is coming. This is our best chance at winter so far this season. So again, how it's going to play out here is still in some pretty extreme question. We're just not sure just yet. And this is the GFS ensemble mean. Since we checked the Canadian and the European, let's check the GFS. And again, you can see the Arctic air on the move here. how much of this will spill out over the water? How will the jet stream interact? And how much of this cold air will we get back across the region? How much of that will stay east of the Rocky Mountains? And I'll show you one of the issues here coming up, because the 12Z European model shows something that I'm a little bit worried about here. And hopefully this doesn't come into fruition, because I want lower elevation snowfall. You see this jet stream here as we go on towards hour 150 or so. This is moving a little bit too far to the east. You need this to stay a little bit too more to the west. This is pinching off that polar lobe, and you can kind of see that get extended back out over the water too soon. That does not allow for the coldest air to move down off to the west of the mountain range here. But again, this is just one model run, and there's still a chilly upper level low around, lots of cold air across British Columbia. So there would be a pretty good clash of air masses here, especially across portions of British Columbia. So we have to really watch this closely. Now, taking a look at the European versus the GFS, 12Z versus 12Z. Now, if we scroll out, you can see initially this is going to start as rainfall. Arctic air starts to sag south across some of British Columbia here, and there's many different scenarios that could unfold under this. But the overall picture is that the GFS, like I showed you, a much more favorable track with the upper level winds and that upper level low right off our coastline, potentially bringing snow even to the Willamette Valley, western Washington. The European is just much more dramatically different this morning. Then you have that upper level low, which is on the chilly side here, but that's not good for lower elevation snowfall. You're still getting southerlies at the surface, and you didn't allow much Arctic air to sneak out into the lower elevations. But on the 12Z GFS, let's go ahead and take a look here. So we're scrolling through this week, and we got some chilly overnight lows coming up here. But then you'll notice we start to moisten things up. What we're looking at here is dew point at the surface. So in the initial stages here, as the first frontal system rolls through, you can see we've got some warm air all the way up through southwest BC, but then you can see that Arctic air mass sag across British Columbia. Very dry air, a defining characteristic of an Arctic air mass, and you can see that spilling out off across the coastal regions, and you can see them really drop off as some of this Arctic air gets down west of the mountains. So again, these individual details here, it's fun to go over them here, but we do not have a lot of confidence in how this is going to unfold just yet. And if we take a look at 80-meter wind speed, so I'm going to scroll all the way out again, and you'll see the initial frontal system start to arrive. Now look at these northerlies pushing down across British Columbia. Still southerly here at the surface, southeasterly across a lot of the Sailor Sea, but then it starts to spill out. Look at the Fraser River outflow start to get going by the time we go towards the following Sunday, and then you can see things turn northerly. You might get some kind of modified Arctic frontal boundary moving down the Puget Sound, upper level low in a fairly favorable spot here. Could bring some disruptive snowfall into the lower terrain. But again, that's just one of many endless scenarios that could unfold from this setup. And if you look at yesterday afternoon's European model here, this is for SeaTac. You can see this is the control run. You're calling for up over 4 inches by the time you get on in towards Monday morning. There's the mean there, eventually climbs up over 4 inches as well. But there's other things that factor here, and you can kind of see the individual ensemble members are kind of all over the place here. But yeah, you don't want to get caught up too much in those details. But last night's GFS, as you can see, probably not as favorable what's going to show up this morning with some much lower snowfall amounts. Now, something also that you can do is look at the European ensembles, probability of snowfall equal to or exceeding 1 inch. This is yesterday afternoon's model run here. So you see 60, 70% there maybe for Seattle. But again, these are probably going to be changing quite a bit. Let's see if I scroll off here and see if we can get the 12Z. How much of this 12Z data do we have? We don't quite have enough, I don't think. We don't quite get far enough out there. So anyway, we'll skip that for now. But again, you can see the cooler pattern coming here as we start to head. Again, this is all the way on in towards, this is still a week out here, folks. So we got a long way to go. We'll be watching and breaking it down day by day, however, and you can see the colder air mass arriving for places like Spokane as well. These are max min temperature ensemble spreads, and you can see the control run as of last night was a bit colder than the ensemble mean for Spokane. They're picking up on the risk of heavy snow, though. This is a good thing. The much higher odds of getting that heavy snowfall across the higher terrain of the Cascades all the way down through California and British Columbia and the Rocky Mountains versus the lower elevations, no doubt. Here's the 6 to 10 day. You can see they're starting to pick up on it a little bit here. They got up below normal here across a lot of the west, and there's that above average signal for precipitation, same time frame. The 8 to 14 day as well, below normal, and kind of a mixed bag there across the west. And, the pattern change will be good because it's been a while since we've had meaningful precipitation. I mean, look at some of these snowpack amounts have really dropped below normal. Much of Oregon's still doing pretty well, but, Idaho and Montana and British Columbia not doing too hot. Much of Washington is below average also. So it'll be a welcome return, and hopefully we can build up that snowpack again. But anyway, yeah, what else? We're just going to continue to struggle through this thing. We'll continue to watch each individual run. We'll see the ensembles go. But right now, the takeaway is the cold air is likely to get very close. How will it interact with Pacific Northwest? Much more of an open question here, folks. And I mean, even with the strongest Arctic blasts that make it into our region, some places don't get as much snowfall as others. And some places get very little compared to some areas that get set up underneath convergence zone bands and things like that. So we always have to remember that as well. Even in the strongest Arctic blast doesn't mean the entire region is going to get blanketed with snowfall. So those are all things we'll be going over the next few days. Otherwise, I hope you guys are having a good day. Click like and subscribe. We will do this all again tomorrow, and I will talk to you guys then.